Hey guys, so ever since I got pregnant, I've been asked so many times, are you more sensitive to horror? How are you with horror? Like, what's your relationship like? How has it changed? Do you plan on continuing to watch horror? I've even gotten comments like, should you be watching horror in pregnancy? Which I found it to be kind of weird. There's just like this weird relationship, I feel like, with horror content once you're pregnant. And I can say my relationship has changed with horror a little bit in that I am much more sensitive to certain kinds of horror, but generally I still enjoy horror movies just the same. Do I prefer a rewatch because I know what's going to happen? Yes, but I have obviously been loving and enjoying all of the new horror movies that have been coming out. And obviously you can probably guess the types of horror movies that I am no longer capable of watching and the type of horror that I'm a little bit more sensitive to these days. I will say I have been looking up trigger warnings way more than normal because it really does depend on my mood if I'm able to handle certain kinds of horror, even ones that aren't related to pregnancy. Now this video is going to be 5 horror movies I can no longer watch, not just because I'm pregnant, but just for one reason or another. And these aren't necessarily the most disturbing horror movies I've ever seen. I've already done a video on that if you want to check that out. These are still good movies that I wish I could rewatch because they are well done. So I will tell you where they're streaming and everything, but I'm just not capable of it, or I just don't want to. Instead of listing potential trigger warnings within the video and possibly spoiling the movies, I will list the trigger warnings in the description box down below for the movies. So if you're curious, you can check the description for those because I just don't want to spoil it for anyone who maybe still wants to watch these movies. They're not all pregnancy horror related, by the way. Yeah, I know that you're probably going to assume that, but not all of them are. And of course, I will tell you where they're streaming because they are good movies and I do recommend them to an extent. They're not for me personally for a rewatch, but I still recommend them to a point, and content warning for all of them, of course. If they're not streaming though in your country, I highly recommend getting a VPN such as NordVPN, which makes it so much easier to access more streaming. Not only that, but NordVPN protects you from cybersecurity threats no matter where you are. And the most common threat for hacking comes from password attacks or credential stuffing. So if you are someone who uses the same email and password combination on many sites, then it's easier when a site is compromised for your information to end up on the dark web. And this, of course, once your information's out there, allows hackers to attempt to access your Google account, your banking, Facebook, Netflix, anything like that. So obviously the best solution is to use different passwords for each website if possible. And of course, that is very difficult and not everyone does that because they're so hard to remember. But NordVPN has also a feature called NordPass where you can store all of your passwords and you don't have to remember anything. They also help you come up with original passwords as well. You can also turn on dark web monitor on NordVPN and get an alert anytime your information does pop up on the dark web. But of course, with NordVPN, my favorite feature of all time is that you can access any country's streaming service selection with just one click. This will allow you to access every single country's horror selection no matter where you're located. All you have to do is click on the country that you want to access, refresh your streaming site, and bam, you have access to all of their horror selection. And you can use it on up to 6 devices with just one account, so all of your devices are protected with NordVPN's threat protection. So make sure you go to nordvpn.com/possessedbyhorror to get a 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 4 bonus months for free. It's completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So thank you so much to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. So the first movie that I will never be watching again is The Collector. Desperate to repay his debt to his ex-wife, an ex-con plots a heist at his new employer's country home, unaware that a second criminal has also targeted the property and rigged it with a series of deadly traps. Now the concept for this movie is really interesting. It's described as like the horror version of Home Alone. So I think the idea is great and I think the setup is good and it kind of just like jumps into the movie. It does not drag on or anything. It's very fast paced. So it has the right formula for a movie that I would really enjoy. And it's also a little bit ironic because I love the Saw franchise and both movies are inspired by the movie Seven. And actually The Collector was pitched to be a Saw prequel, which I find really interesting, but that was denied, which I'm kind of glad because I just don't see it fitting in the Saw universe. I feel like it would have felt forced into the universe and just wouldn't fit in there. So the reason why I can't really watch The Collector anymore, it's just a little bit too much for me. I found it a little bit of a struggle to get through. There are some scenes in it that make me highly uncomfortable and just not the kind of content that I enjoy in horror movies. Maybe when I saw this movie when it came out in 2009, I feel like I was a lot more open to darker content in horror movies, but there was just something about this. I don't know if it was the atmosphere. I mean, there were some scenes that kind of crossed a line for me, but I think mostly there was just something about the tone of this movie that felt very disturbing, even though it's not like the most disturbing. I've seen worse, you know? But for me, not worth the second watch. Not really a fan of the content in it. Next up, we have the French movie Inside. 4 months after the death of her husband, a woman on the brink of motherhood is tormented in her home by a strange woman who wants her unborn baby. Do I have to say anything else? I just don't think I have to explain why I can never watch this movie again too much. I watched this before I was pregnant and actually really liked it. It's a great, great movie. If you're a fan of Martyrs, it's another French movie. They really know how to push it in the disturbing factor. I mean, just pregnancy horror is just not something that I can handle right now or probably ever again. This movie is incredibly gory. There's so much blood in this movie. Of course, you know going in what kind of content you're going to be getting. It is pregnancy horror, you know? And I'm not against pregnancy horror. I think there is a time and a place for it because it is so disturbing. But of course, being pregnant, I'm not going to be open to that, and I'm not going to put myself through that or, you know, watch it. I feel like I don't even have to give a trigger warning for Inside because you just know what the trigger is probably going to be. This movie is dark. It's very disturbing. It's great. It's so well done, and the horror is there, obviously. If you like home invasion movies as well, I think you'd really like this one because it is technically a home invasion. Now, the American remake is on Tubi, so you have to rent or buy the French version, like on Prime or wherever you rent or buy movies. The American version is available on Tubi. Now, I can't speak for that one. I actually bought it at a Dollar Tree for $1 before $1.25, you know, before it went up. But I found it at a Dollar Tree, so I bought it and never had a chance to watch it before I got pregnant, and then now I'm getting rid of it in my collection because I just don't have an interest in it. So that's a movie I'll never watch, is the American version of Inside. Although I will say I find American remakes tend to be a little bit less disturbing than their foreign counterparts. Like with Martyrs specifically, the French movie is obviously the standout. Like, that movie's incredible. Also kind of a one-time watch, but I think I would watch that again. But the American remake of Martyrs was so toned down and tame compared to that that I don't recommend that. Anyway, moving on, not gonna watch Inside. I think that's very much a given. Next up, we have Incident in a Ghostland. Now, this is available on American Netflix, and it also goes by the title of just Ghostland. So if you can't find it under Incident of a Ghostland, also look for Ghostland. A mother of two who inherits a house is confronted with murderous intruders on the first night in their new home and fights for her daughter's lives. 16 years later, when the daughters reunite at the house, things get really strange. Speaking of Martyrs, Pascal Laugier, I'm so sorry, I butcher names every single time, also directed this movie. So if you like the French movie of Martyrs, he also directed Incident in a Ghostland. Now, this movie, there's many reasons why I will never watch this movie again. I understand why it's so hyped up. It is very disturbing, but in such a weird way where it's not a lot of the actual content. It's more so like what is implied throughout the movie that makes it so psychologically disturbing. It's not a straightforward, disturbing movie. I mean, it can be, but I just feel like it holds back visually on some things that normally it would really push the limits if it was like a traditional disturbing type movie. Is there another word for, or like categorization of like disturbing movies besides just saying disturbing? Like the shock factor, like the Martyrs, the Serbian films, the Megan is Missings of the world. Like, what do we call those? Below the ocean level on the iceberg, you know what I mean? Anyway, the twists and turns of this movie, it starts off completely normal And I was like, I don't know why people say this movie's really disturbing. Why is this really hyped up? It's just kind of like your average run-of-the-mill movie for so long. And then there's a lot of twists and turns going on. And it gets obviously very messed up. And usually I enjoy movies that, you know, take me for a ride, like Barbarian. It's like that level of a ride, you know? I like to be caught off guard with movies. I like to not have it be predictable in any way. However, this was just a little bit too disturbing, you know what I mean? Like some of the content in it, not for me. And I will say Pascal really likes to do disturbing, and he's very good at it. Again, not the worst I've seen. It was a decent movie. Overall, it wasn't my favorite, like, as far as like how it was filmed and the performances and everything. It was good. I can't say I enjoyed this movie, but it is well made and it will surprise you. So I do recommend it for the right people, but there's some stuff in there. It's a little bit too much for me, at least as of right now. I don't see a rewatch in my future with this one. Also, I want to talk about how there is transphobia in this movie, and that's another reason that it makes me very uncomfy. And I was like, why is everyone hyping this up when it's like blatant transphobia is in this? Like, I'm not a fan of that. It just made me uncomfortable in a realistic way that I don't like to be. I like to be uncomfortable in a fictional way, in, you know, a way that I can separate myself from the movie a little bit. And everyone is looking for something different in the horror genre. Some people love to be disturbed beyond their limits on purpose, but not me. Not especially right now, being pregnant. I just can't do it. Next up is a movie you knew was going to be on this list if you know anything about movies I've talked about in the past. Now, this one does cross over with the most disturbing movies I've ever seen, and that is Mother. A couple's relationship is tested when uninvited guests arrive at their home, disrupting their tranquil existence. Of course, if you've seen it, you know this is much, much more than that. This is an introvert's nightmare. There's a lot of things about this movie that are impossible for me to get through as of right now. And I don't even think I have to explain why I won't watch it again, and I won't too much because obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but I will have trigger warnings of it down below. But I think a lot of people are aware of Mother at this point. Jennifer Lawrence was actually highly traumatized while filming this movie, and she said she'll never do anything like this ever again. And it was pretty much the hardest movie she's ever worked on. I really wanted to rewatch this like before I got pregnant, and I had only seen it the one time in the theaters, and it was probably my most intense theater experience that I've ever had. But as of right now, I can't handle this kind of movie anymore. I can't handle the stress, honestly. Like, there's a reason why I'm not going to Halloween Horror Nights. I'm not doing the haunted houses. Not recommended for pregnant people, you know what I mean? I just can't do anxiety like on purpose like that. And I really have a love-hate relationship with this movie because it just is one of those that has stuck with me for so long. I have to honor it because of my experience with it. And it disturbed me so much and got to me so much. Like, it's such a powerful movie, in like one of the most powerful as far as impacting my emotions and feelings, anxiety, everything. It's just a fantastic movie. Like, the performances are on point. This is Jennifer Lawrence's, some of her best work in my opinion, but also the story and the, you know, metaphor and everything. I think it's a beautiful movie. It's just a lot. Now, it is directed by Darren Aronofsky, who also did Requiem for a Dream. He loves his disturbing stuff, you know, but I really like his style of filmmaking. More recently, he's done The Whale with Brendan Fraser, which has been at the center of controversy in and of itself, and still debating on watching it. It's not really a horror from what I understand. It's more psychological, so I don't think I am obligated to for my channel. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on The Whale, though. I am curious about it. But also Darren Aronofsky has also done Noah, which I absolutely love. Noah. Obviously not a horror movie, it is a religious drama film, but I love that movie so much, so he kind of has a good range of film, I feel. Anyway, but Mother is the one on this list that I am the most bummed about not being able to watch again, and maybe one day I'll be able to get through it, you know, another time, another place, skip some scenes, if you know what I mean, and I might be able to power through. Okay, so I do have one more movie to talk about. However, I do have some honorable mentions at the end. and that are not pregnancy related or anything, just to throw out there. So the last movie that I can no longer ever watch again, not that I was really that interested in seeing it again, but I can't do it, is Dumplings. Now this is a Hong Kong movie from 2005 that was originally adapted, or I should say made into a feature-length film from a short that was in The Three Extremes. Aunt May's famous homemade dumplings provide amazing age-defying qualities popular with middle-aged women, but her latest customer, a fading actress, is determined to find out what the secret ingredient is. I mean, do I have to explain this one? Again, don't want to spoil anything. You do find out, you know, the secret ingredient and things like that, but you could probably take a guess on what this is. I really don't think it's a spoiler by any means, but it's not necessarily like a huge reveal at the end of the movie or anything like that. I find it so fascinating, the changes that I feel in everything. Pregnancy changes everything, but the way that I used to enjoy this type of content and pursue it and be able to handle it, and then it just, as soon as I got pregnant, it just completely changed everything, and now my threshold's a little bit lower. Now, this is a good movie. Like, I remember enjoying this movie, and I think I actually even did a review of it years and years ago, if you want to go find that. Very, very old video. Don't recommend it. I'm pretty sure I gave it a positive review, because looking back on it, I remember enjoying it. And it was unique because at the time, I hadn't seen all the horror movies that I've seen now, so it was like a new experience for me watching Dumplings at that time. Again, this is probably like 9 years ago, I want to say, that I reviewed this. But obviously it's going to be highly, highly disturbing, and it's just weird. It's a weird movie. I saw a user review on IMDb that called this movie, or with the title of their review, an Asian horror that Hollywood will never remake. And I think that's a fair assessment. I think this one's a little bit too weird and disturbing for American cinema and Hollywood. It's just too gruesome and a little bit too disturbing, and not really in like a Martyrs type of way. It's just a very unique type of movie. Okay, so honorable mention that I want to say, and this is going to be the last time I think that I ever address this movie or ever bring it up again in a video or on this channel, just in general, Jeepers Creepers. Now, I bring it up only because the new one's coming out, and I've already on TikTok gotten some people asking about it or mentioning it and whatnot, and I made a whole TikTok on why I will never recommend a Jeepers Creepers movie. Now, I actually did a whole video years ago, I will link it up here, maybe like 4 years ago or something like that, on Jeepers Creepers, because the third one was coming out at that time, and I called it While I Won't Watch Jeepers Creepers 3 or whatever, or something, I don't know, but the director of the original, Victor Salva, is obviously a convicted pedophile. Like, he went to prison for this. It's not just an accusation. He went to prison. He served time before making the Jeepers Creepers movie. So it was a known thing in Hollywood, and he still continuously got work. So me personally, makes me uncomfy. I have boundaries with certain things. I don't judge anyone who still watches the Jeepers Creepers movie. I don't care if you still enjoy those movies and you are able to separate the art from the artist. I understand that to an extent. There are certain things that I have a hard line with that I cannot. I'm unable to do that. A couple other examples: musicians, Lost Prophets. I had to completely separate myself from them, and I really was a huge fan back in high school, and that broke my heart. Like, that destroyed me for a little bit and disgusted me, and I can never obviously listen to that music again. Marilyn Manson, completely boycotted him out of my life. Can't do it. So there are just certain things that I'm just personally not able to separate the art from the artist, or look at the movie and appreciate it, that other people worked on it and whatnot. They already got paid. They've been paid. I don't need to support it anymore. I don't need to recommend the first Jeepers Creepers ever again. Like, you know about it. Me not watching it ever again, it's not that, like, I'm not supporting them. They've been paid for it. So it's just a personal boundary of mine. I have absolutely no judgment at all, though, for those of you who enjoy the movies or are looking forward to the new one. absolutely do not mind at all. Obviously, who am I? But I just wanted to include it in this video because it felt appropriate. Movies I'll never watch again, any of the Jeepers Creepers movies, which is disappointing because I did like them. They're obviously early 2000s and I did enjoy them at one point in time until learning about this. So anyway, there you have the 5 plus an honorable mention horror movies that I will never watch again. I know it's kind of a weird idea for a video, but hopefully maybe you get some recommendations out of it. I don't know. Maybe this is the kind of horror that you want to see. No judgment. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this video and these movies. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.